Hi, I'm Eli Harwood. I'm a licensed therapist and I'm on a mission to help create more secure relationships between parents and kids. And I have an attachment background, so my research is around attachment. And I'm trying to disperse the information through the internet, through the World Wide Web, through other relationships, in my clinic, through a book that I've written. Like everything I'm doing is around how can we help kids get the connection and attunement they need from parents so they can grow up into more secure, thriving adults? Because so much of the mental health issues we see in our clinics are not organic mental health issues. They aren't a result of a serious mental health proclivity like schizophrenia or bipolar. They're a result of these attachment insecurities of people not getting care in their early childhood and in their relationship to their parents. And so within that, I'm also very passionate about boys being given empathy and attunement and care and sensitivity at the same level that we give to our girls.
I'd love to just have you define attachment theory for people who don't know about it.
So attachment theory really began in the 1950s. There was a gentleman named John Bowlby, and he started to kind of look at the motivation. Why do people do the things that they do? And he was looking at it through a different lens and started to recognize that there was something about this bond that we have with our children. So this caregiver-child bond and the outcome that happens through that child's development based on what the nature of that bond is. And then Mary Ainsworth was kind of the next important researcher, came on the scene, and she created this research protocol called the strange situation. And I am trained to score the strange situation. So I've like geeked out on this protocol more than anything else. I can watch a video and I can tell you, based on this protocol, this is what this attachment pattern is between these two people, et cetera. So Mary Ainsworth does this research. And then there's other players that come onto the scene: Elizabeth Carlson, Mary Main, Alan Shrove, that they start to do longitudinal studies on some of this data. So it's, in science, we're looking at like, is data observable? That's better data than reportable data, right? So just because someone says something doesn't mean that's the way it is. So these are gold standards of research. And this is what the attachment research has. So the strange situation was observable data. And then we want to see, well, what happens over time? That's longitudinal data. So they studied infants and caregiver dyads in the strange situation, and then they followed them for 30 years.
Wow.
So we have incredible information about how the relationship between the caregiver and the child affects the way that child learns to relate and the way that child feels about themselves, but their nervous system, and there's correlations even to like cardiovascular health, addiction. Like it has a huge impact, right? So there are several branches, however, of the attachment research. So this is where it gets a little confusing. My real area of expertise is around the developmental attachment research. There's a group of social psychologists who took some of Mary Main's work. Mary Main did that Delta attachment interview. They took some of her work and they kind of spun off of it, and they did other great research. Unfortunately, those things don't correlate. So
interesting.
Yeah. So when people talk about an attachment style, they are coming from the body of research that is the social psychology. That's a newer branch of attachment research.
And that's more like relationship research.
Adult relationships. Yep. But here's the key difference. The developmental research studies a relationship between a caregiver and a child. So I'm looking at the dynamic between the two, whereas the social psychology research is doing a bit more of saying like, this is who you've become. So this is your style. And I use that less frequently with my clients for a couple of reasons. One, we can have a different relationship pattern with different people. So I may have an avoidant tendency with this person, but I have an ambivalent tendency with this person. And so then it gets confusing. It's like,
oh, that's so interesting, because different people trigger different things in your nervous system. That makes a lot of sense.
Just to help you all know, there is so much research on this. So, here's what we know for sure and is standard across all of it is that the way in which your caregivers respond to your tender, emotional, social needs as a child affects the way you relate to people throughout your development. And other close relationships can change that pattern for positive or negative. So I can grow up with a really secure pattern and I can end up in a really toxic, abusive relationship and develop an avoidant pattern or develop an ambivalent pattern or get some disorganization in my style of relating.
I don't want to spend too much time on it because I'm so much more interested in helping parents of boys in particular
Yes.
work on that attunement that you're
Yes.
talking about and that kind of empathy. I kind of feel like so much would change if parents just stopped doing one thing, which is if they just stopped telling their boys, especially, you're okay. Like, I just feel like if
100%.
they just stopped that one thing, that would make such a huge difference.
Yes.
And I'm curious, obviously, that's in the negative, right? Stop doing this thing. But I'd love to talk to you about what are the things that parents can do with boys to
So,
help them feel more connected and have better relationships.
yes. So we have a cultural myth in our midst that says that we are protecting our boys when we toughen them up, when we teach them to be tough. Okay. And I'm going to use a metaphor here to help parents understand why this is a problematic myth. In our bodies, when we develop a callus, something becomes calloused because it dies. So like the back of my heel is incredibly calloused. You could poke it with a needle right now and I would feel nothing.
Right.
But the reason I feel nothing is
I
because
start crying. It's so
skin. It's dead skin, right?
Right.
Now, if that callus gets injured, it actually is far more at risk than if soft tissue in my body that has blood flow gets injured. So if I get a big cut on my leg where there is no callus, I will feel that pain. It will hurt. And my body will be able to send healing resources to that cut easily. So that blood flow will go to that cut, coagulation will occur. I will be able to protect myself from infection and bacteria because there is live cellular activity. But if you split open my heel, it cannot heal. There is no blood flow. It cannot reconnect. It has no capacity for connection. So when we teach our boys to cut themselves off from what they feel, we are teaching them to be calloused. And now when life hits them square in the eyes, they will have no way to repair because they will not have access to the most important part of human resilience, which is each other. Right?
I love that metaphor so much. That is so gorgeous. Especially because people I find are so afraid to hurt. Yes. They're so afraid to feel their pain. So it's not just the boys or the kids that are being taught to cut off, it's the adults. And if the adults are cut off, like how do they then teach that to their kids?
Right. And connect and act as a healing balm. The problem with the gender piece of it is that we know that people hold their infant boys differently than they hold their infant.
Wait, what?
Yes. I will try and find the study for you so that you can have the study, but that there is research that they look at them less frequently. They use less tender words with their infant boys. And this is unconscious. So this isn't like parents deciding they're going to toughen up their infant. It's an unconscious
bias that's acting
bias
out.
And the bias, and here's the sad part, the bias is in protection of the child. The bias it delusionally thinks if I'm too soft on my son, he'll be soft, which means he will get hurt more, right? Because if my son's too soft, he's a P word. And if he's a P word, he's going to get the shit beat out of him on the playground. So if I am tender with my son, he will get hurt more. No, if you are tender with your son, he will have access to you. You are the blood source. If he has access to you and there is pain, he will be able to heal. If he loses access to you, there is no way for the tissue to connect. There is no way for things to heal and coagulate. So
because they're dead.
Because they don't have a secure attachment pattern at all, right? They're disconnected. And so now they have to handle everything on their own, which means they disassociate, which means they drink, which means they use drugs. I like to tell parents, as I say, listen, we have different sexes, right? And actually, according to the CDC, there are 13 different chromosomal combinations. So there's not just two sexes. You're not just male or female. There's 13 different chromosomal combinations that exist that are known in the human biome. So the problem with what we've done around saying, this means this is what boys are and this is what girls are, right? Girls are sugar and spice and everything nice. What are boys supposed to be? I don't know, rough and tough and tumble, okay? What we've done is that we have over-identified children and human beings with their genitals, which this is my favorite term, and I really think it's very smart, but it didn't get as much hits on the internet as I thought it should have. But anyway, I call this overgenitalization. Okay.
I love that. That's really
Right.
good.
So when we overgeneralize, we're oversimplifying, we're reducing something to a small part of it, and we aren't looking at it in its complexity. Well, when we overgenitalize, we say boys are like this, girls are like that.
Right.
And we have this long-term myth in specific that is extremely harmful to both boys and girls because
totally different gender pressure. Right.
Yes, but we say to boys, you're tough, you're rough. This is this boy quality. And so they begin to identify with it, which means they de-identify with their social resilience. Because if I'm tough, I should be able to handle this thing that happened on the bus and not tell my mom that someone was bullying me. If I'm tough, I shouldn't care that so-and-so doesn't like me. And, I do care. And so instead I'm going to just keep trying to get them to like me, even though they don't. But there's all of this mythology that goes on that robs boys of their ability to connect and to be seen and to be felt and to be heard in their authentic self. So boys get a lot of voices in terms of they get a lot of that gender privilege of having access to power positions, but they get very little access to their authentic voice. Right.
So can you define that for people? Because you hear that's like a buzzword, like your authentic self, but what does that mean in psychological terms within this paradigm?
Yes. So all of us feel sad. All of us feel scared. All of us feel shame. All of us feel anger. All of us feel joy. We all feel the full gamut of human emotion. There is no human being that's missing one of those things. Even when we look at neurodivergence, there is no person that doesn't feel all of the feelings. Okay. So authentic self is, I am going to show up in a body state that is vulnerable, that is not confident, in charge, right? So what boys feel the pressure to do is they're only supposed to want, right, to be rough and tumble, to be in charge, to look tough, to look cool, calm, and collected. And so they are shutting down their fear. Boys feel scared. The world is scary.
Totally.
Their shame, sharing shame is a massive part of resilience. Brené Brown's work has really highlighted to us that, we all feel shame and that shame dissipates when we speak it out loud to another person.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But if I'm tough, I'm not supposed to feel like there's something wrong with me. So I'm not going to say something. And now I'm going to go into a toxic shame spiral where how am I going to cope? Well, I'm probably going to check out somehow. Right. How am I going to check out? Well, porn, drugs, fights. Fighting is an addiction for a lot of boys, right? Getting into a scuffle.
Scuffle. I love that word. It's interesting that you're saying this. So my 7-year-old son, there was a bully in his class, and he told me, and he said, he's really mean and he's mean to everyone. And I just, don't like it. But I guess he didn't feel comfortable telling the teacher or this kid. And then this other boy said to him, don't you think he's being mean? And my son was like, yes. And so he got in the car after school and said, guess what? I shared my emotions with a friend. And it was the sweetest thing. He was like, it wasn't just you. But that was a bonding experience that he got to have with a friend to kind of share what didn't feel good.
I love the way you shared this, because I think what gets missed is that, we talk about male bonding and what do we envision, right? Shooting a bunch of shit somewhere, or we're just, but this is bonding is I am sharing with you about something I'm feeling in the world that maybe I haven't shared with somebody else. That boys miss out on that. And my husband will talk about this. We'll go to a party and we'll both be talking to whoever. We kind of are like the divide and conquer couple when we go to parties.
I love that.
Over talking to flitting around with my people, and he's flitting around with his people, and we'll get back in the car and I'm like, how was that? How was everything? How's whatever? And he'll tell me oh yeah, they're going to Yosemite next weekend or this, but all of the details that were shared are very practical, functional details. And he'll be like, how about you? And I'm like, well, I don't know if they're going to Yosemite. She's been thinking about filing for divorce. This is what's happening in their family system. And he's always like, how did you get that much information that quickly? We would have to spend a weekend together to learn all of that about each other. And it's That's so sad because he wants to know those things. He loves his friends.
Right.
But there isn't that same permission to just go into those authentic places because they're messy and they don't look tough and you don't have all the answers. And ironically, being tough then cuts you off from being resilient. We are relational creatures. So it is our belonging with others that gives us fulfillment, right? And that there's a sense of rest and hope that happens in our heart when we feel genuinely known, genuinely seen, genuinely connected with the people in our lives. I can't imagine that very many people lay on their deathbed and think, oh, why didn't I upgrade my car in 2025?
I really could have used those heated seats.
Right? Like I should have gotten the sunroof option. Right? No, you lay on your deathbed and you're like, did my kids know I loved them? Did they feel it? Why didn't I spend more time with that partner who I loved and adored? And why did I let that fall apart? Why did I keep drinking instead of facing my trauma so that I could be available, to the people I love?
Yeah.
Like we are relational creatures. That is why we have done as well as we have. That's why we're still on this earth, even though we might take it down, but hopefully we don't. Right.
Yeah.
But that's why we're here. Like we're here and we've thrived because we work together. And I mean, I personally believe that if we could offer sheer presence, empathy, sensitivity, and attunement to our young boys, some of the most unbelievably massive problems we're facing as humanity would dissipate. I really do.
I
think
agree.
it's at the root of so much of our human struggle. It's at the root of the statistics around sexual violence, right? And it's not because boys are violent. They're not violent. They're people. They're human. It's because we haven't given them access to their tenderness.
Yes.
It's because we cut them off at an age where they cannot understand what's happening and where then they are stunted developmentally and they lose attunement skills. Attunement is our ability to accurately read or notice and receive or feel the nonverbal cues occurring in somebody else's body. So if I'm sitting here and we're talking and I say, I'm really glad to be here. Okay. I said words, and so you can read my words, but you probably attuned to the fact that I had a flat affect. My face wasn't showing any emotion, that I had a monotone vocal range, right? And so, you probably didn't, I mean, what did you feel in your body?
When you said that? Well, I'm so hypersensitive to all of that. And this is part of an exercise I do in the curriculum where I talk about voice not matching words and faces not matching words and learning how to do that because I think it's so important. So it becomes this fun exercise game. And the kids think it's so funny. I'm like, hey, it's great to see you. And then the other person has to be like, yeah, it's awesome. Love it. And then the kids are like, they are not really happy to see each other, whatever it is. No, but what I felt in my body was something's wrong. And I think as a child, you often will be like, oh, did I do something? As an adult, you have the ability to be like, this might not have anything to do with me. But I think kids often really personalize that, right? If they feel like something's wrong.
Especially in homes where there's abuse. Right. So that's actually, they do personalize it. Abuse or neglect or a pattern that's inconsistent. But I say that to say, we are always attuning on some level, right? That's the human nature, is to attune. And this is obvious. It takes different turns in terms of your neurotype. So like there are folks like on the spectrum where maybe attunement isn't their strength, although there are other folks on the spectrum who are very attuned. So just where you live and what that means for you. But that process of getting in sync with another human being is about opening up our bodies. So we can't be attuned if we're defensive.
Yeah.
If we're clenching, if we're tight, we cannot get in tune with someone else. We're blocking everybody else out. So it's like attunement happens when we relax and we turn towards someone and we pick up on their facial cues and their nervous system cues and we attend to them and we allow ourselves to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be hypervigilant. Hypervigilance is different than attunement. Attunement is I'm open and I'm paying attention and I'm receiving your body state. Hypervigilant is I am anxious and I am scanning your body state, trying to figure out if you're okay.
Yeah, that's what I did growing up.
Yep. And
Yep.
that's intrusive. So like as a parent, your dilemma now is like, how do I not do that to my children? Because I don't want them to get hurt. How do I calm my own body and enter their body states with them instead of projecting my own anxiety onto them? So if I'm attuned,
Yes.
I hold on to my calmness even as I receive your feelings. I hold on to my calmness even as I receive your feelings. If I am intrusive, I relinquish my calmness in exchange for your feelings. I enmesh with you.
Okay.
So you're upset now, I'm upset.
Right.
Which is very different than you're upset and I am feeling you and I am with you and I am letting you borrow my calmness and my care and my presence. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And now numbness is different than attunement and calmness. So if I sit with you and I appear to and I show no emotion, I'm not calm and you won't be calm either because you will feel alone in what you feel. I am numb. Right. And this is what I see happening in endemic proportions with our boys and men is a numb state. I heard someone once say like, we train boys and men to cut off what they feel when they're young. And then we blame them when they don't know how to feel the things that they need to feel in their marriages and in their relationships to their kids.
What do parents do if they're having a hard time managing themselves and their own mental health with their kids and this attunement?
You want to think about your own body as needing co-regulation in the same way your children's bodies need co-regulation. So where can you find refuge and help yourself absorb that refuge and absorb those places of safety? So that could be a friend. That could be nature, like going out and every week you get outside and you walk for an hour. That could be meditation, finding some, online meditation that you can use to help you practice calming your body down. That could be therapy. Find places that help you feel calm and regulated and learn how to calm your own body. And this isn't something you're going to just easily do. So be gentle with yourself and do the best you can. And know that, not all generational curses are broken in one generation because not all generational curses were cast over one generation, right? They sometimes are cast over many, 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 many generations. So you're going to do your best to offer your children better than what you had, right? But it's not necessarily going to be the whole thing. They may have to do some of their own cycle breaking, and that's okay. But so be considering, how can I find ways to ground my body, my psyche, my self-expectations, who in my life, where in my life, what in my life can do that. Right? And you set those things up. And I'll tell you for myself, I've done a lot of my own therapy. I'm a runner. I love to run. It helps calm me. It keeps me feeling sane. It helps me process things. I run outside because I love nature. I have a lot of really lovely, nurturing friends that I've gotten rid of everybody who's not that way.
All right. You're like, no, thank you.
I just can't. I just can't. I'm a highly sensitive soul and I had a lot of childhood trauma. And so I can't. And that keeps me pretty grounded. And I hear from the people who witness me parenting, like, you're so calm. And what I think is like, well, I work really hard to be calm. What we want to understand about the brain is that we have these three parts of our brain, and this is debated, but I've looked through the debates and I still think this is true. So
okay, great. Love it.
There are three parts of the brain, and we have a brain stem that handles all of our autonomic parts of our body, our digestion, our cardiovascular, the way that our blood's flowing through our veins. Then we have a limbic system that is designed to protect us from danger. So that part of our brain, I like to think of as like our dog brain or our animal brain. It's our reactive brain. It does the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, faint. Okay.
Yep.
Then we have our human brain, our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that makes meaning, that gives us empathy, that helps us problem solve. When our basic needs aren't met, so that's the lowest part of our brainstem, that lizard brain. When our basic needs are met, it prevents our top part of the brain from from being as well functioning, right? So if I'm hungry, I can't think as clearly, right?
Right.
Right.
Or I haven't slept, right?
Right. So if I'm hungry and I haven't slept, well, now my limbic system's going to go off and I'm going to go into a survival mode to try to get me those things that will help me function again.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if our basic needs are being met, but we feel unsafe for some reason, same thing happens. My limbic system's going to take over and my prefrontal cortex is going to stop firing as much, right? So the reaction brain is going to fire more than the thinking brain.
Right.
So if I'm parenting and I haven't fed myself and I haven't slept, I'm not going to parent with as much intention.
No.
If I'm parenting and I don't feel socially safe, I'm in a situation that's really scary and overwhelming, I'm not going to parent with as much intention. And I think this is something a lot of people, understandably get wrong, which is they think the more I sacrifice for the kids, the more my kids will feel loved by me. But no, the more you sacrifice for your kids, the more your kids will feel your lack of well-being
and presence.
So,
right.
Yeah. So and it's a mix, right? Like, I mean, I have 3 children. It's insane, but I make sure that I have self-care.
Like, let me be clear. Right?
Yeah. Like, it's not like I'm like getting a massage every day and like, I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But in the moments when I can, I mean, I've created real kind of almost like religious structure around some of that self-care. Like I get 3 runs in every week, period.
That's amazing.
Unless I'm sick. And then I don't, right? Or I don't feel good, unless I don't want to. But there's this sense of like, this is a required part of functioning as a parent.
For me, right? And everyone needs to find that for them. Right.
That's right. You find that what is yours. Is it journaling? Is it writing? Is it singing? Is it art? Is it, big social groups?
In recapping you, it seems like what you're saying is something for parents of boys to pay attention to, is how they hold their children, how they love their children, to be very mindful of unconscious biases, even if you don't think you have them, to be more intentional and to give them attunement and empathy in the same way girls get it. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I help them name overtly the problematic biases in the world about boys. Help them identify that there is a myth in the midst, right? So that they can go, oh, that's what that is. And so I will say, like, have you noticed that that it feels much scarier as a boy to play dress up and put nail polish on and do these kind of things that are really fun? And like, how sad is it that like girls get to do all of that stuff and boys have a greater risk when they try to do it? Or have you noticed that in movies and stuff, like there's a lot more scenes where boys are comforting crying girls, but not a lot of scenes where girls are comforting crying boys? That's messed up.
Yes.
Like, so, help them be detectives of the cultural messaging. But if they're experiencing with you that their tenderness, their tears, their sorrow, their fears are accepted and understood by you, and I don't mean like overly understood. I don't mean that they say like, I'm scared to go to school. And you're like, okay, you don't have to go to school. No, like, okay,
right. Yeah.
we're going to go to school. I mean, I know not every kid's going to go to school, whatever, but we're going to help you face your fears, but we're going to do it in a relational way. Like, I feel scared too. Thank you so much for sharing that fear. Come here, buddy. I'm going to hug you and hold you when you're afraid. I'm going to sit next to you. I'm going to attend to you. I'm not going to push you into not feeling that way. Right. Give them that experience of belonging in the deepest, most profound way with you.
Right.
So as they go out into the world, they seek relationships where they can be seen and understood in all of their complex humanness.